What's up guys, Shane from Fugatech 3D printing, and today I'm finally going to do it. We're going to do part 6 and we're going to finish up my HyperCube. Welcome back guys. So it has been a long time since I've actually gone ahead and finished working on my HyperCube. And so for any of you that didn't see any of the old videos that I literally did over a year ago, it's been a very long time. I followed Tech2C's build guide almost to the T. I did my best to stay on track, but there were a few parts that were re-engineered by Arthur's lab. I think he goes by, he's on Thingiverse. He had remixed a bunch of the parts to make some captive nuts in there, which was a huge benefit to this build and made it so much easier to actually keep everything in line. And it was just easier building, have to worry about like needle nose pliers and a screwdriver and trying to get everything in there. It just made it a lot easier for a lot of the parts. And then I took a little bit of a detour on some of it, but for the most part, this is almost a one-for-one replica of Tech2C's build. So I left off last time, again, over a year ago, is that I got everything assembled. It was all wired up, crazy, and it printed. That was it. I got some good prints off of it, and I've done some things since then, and I'll go over some of those right now. So the main thing I did since then is again reprint with some of Arthur's parts. I used some of his originally, but I went back and used some other ones. I'm actually using a different X carriage for the extruder, or I should say for the hot end, and that actually has a belt tensioner built into it, which has made my life so much easier to get these belts nice and tight, and if I need to loosen them a little bit, it's a little too tight, but they're right on point. I'm also using you saw them in the last video, but I am using something different. I am using the Anycubic Ultra Base because it is an amazing print service. It's by far my favorite one of anything that I have. It's way better than a flexible build plate, absolutely. You don't have to take it off, there's no re-leveling needed. Once you set this thing, the springs are rock solid. You just let it sit and it works great. So prints come off without any trouble whatsoever. I just finished printing this earlier and parts literally release themselves, especially PLA parts. It's very nice and easy. I've got the extruder mounted here in the back. I went ahead and cleaned up using some of this tubing. So this is called protective wire wrap. I got this from Harbor Freight for, I don't know, a few dollars, I think is all it was. And it comes 14 foot in each. That one, or this one's 10 foot. And then I have another, so this is 3/8. I have this, I used 1/4 inch what I used, and I think I have 1/2 inch over there that I did end up using. He used a roughly 3/8 inch, but I didn't like how sloppy it looked, and I was able to get all my wiring in the 1/4 inch. I think it looks a lot better. So I went ahead and stayed with that. I've got my Bowden tube going back here to my extruder, which goes down here to the spool holder, which that was a remix part using an extra piece of the carbon fiber tubes for the X. Yes, I am still using carbon fiber tubes. I have been printing on this for the past year. They're fine. I'm using the IGES bushings on them. It works out great. I have no issues whatsoever with that, so that's really cool. So you can see I'm using a different screen down here, and then I did cover everything up using this piece of foam core, which actually is foam core left over from when I did the enclosure of my FT5. And underneath, I'm going to move all this stuff off, we'll be able to see the electronics. So underneath you can see I have my power supply mounted here. I actually ended up using some 2028 brackets because I was using these PLAs and they were bending down. They just could not hold the weight over time. I've had these on there for about a year, a little over a year maybe, and they were sagging quite a bit from this 20 amp power supply, so these were not the best option. I didn't think they would be, but I didn't think they would sag as much as they did because PLA is pretty rigid. It did bend, so I took those off and used that 2020. I just had to grind off. They have like little tabs in there to help them line up inside the aluminum extrusion. I just had to take my grinding wheel, I took a Dremel and just grinded it off, and that went away. It was fine. Then I've got my MKS Gen 1.4 mounted in here and a little 40mm fan blowing on my TMC 2208 drivers because they get hot. And I've also tested this with 2100 drivers, and those also run even hotter than 2208s. But that just keeps all that nice and cool. I've got all my cabling kind of managed down here much better now. This I've not really managed yet. I just kind of have it tucked in there for right now. I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. And I've cut all my other cables a little shorter. And most of this video is about cable management. So again, I'll show you here where I have all the cables running up and along in this tubing coming down the back. I'm using two 2020 mounts. These actually can be put in any orientation, have a cable go across them in any way. I was using the one out of his build, which was for the 1/2 inch protective wrap and uses a single zip tie. But again, since I'm using something smaller, this ended up being, I couldn't really actually clamp in the tubing correctly, so I had to sacrifice that, and I found a remix model which I like actually much better, and that is how I'm anchoring it in 2 points in the top, back, and the bottom, and that keeps that nice and straight out of the way. And then all my cabling comes in from the hot end, the fans up there, then I have my Z end stop going into it, then it goes all the way down to the back and goes in the back there. I was looking at some type of cable chain here for the Z, or I should say for the heated bed. I didn't find anything that I liked. Maybe I'll change that eventually. I was going to throw a MOSFET on here, but it's not really necessary, honestly, for this. There are some heated beds that need it. I don't believe that the Ultra Base actually needs it. It heats up just fine without it. There's not too much draw on a 20 amp power supply with it, so for me, I decided just not to use it. But for the cable routing, that was the tricky part, because before I just had kind of wrapped them around the 2020. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, because I had to use these really, really long 1 meter and 1.5 meter cables, just because they just weren't long enough. The standard that come with a printer, they're meant to be closer to the board. On general printers, any i3, they're all close enough. The only one that's ever hard is gonna be your extruder motor, or your, well, even that is I'm on the side, unless it's a direct drive, that has to be longer than. But again, regardless, on any traditional i3, most of them are Bowden style. All the standard cables are well within reach of the board. Well, here I've got 2 motors way up top here. I've got a hot end way far away. It comes all the way down around here. I have an extruder at the far end and the control panel all down here. So I printed out a bunch of these really, really small 2020 clips. I didn't want to print like full slips because it's just kind of a waste. They take way too long to print. Now these print flat on the, and I did them on the Anycubic i3 Mega. I printed 50 of them, no problem whatsoever. It ended up taking like 50 minutes to print all of them. I still have a ton left, which I'll probably end up using a bunch of other builds. I don't know how many I would need, but I'm using about 4 for every cable. So I have my X motor running down, I have my Y motor running down, I have my extruder motor running down and coming across, and even underneath on the underside of this, I have them kind of pinned away, just so they're not totally hanging out there in the open and they're a little far away. But again, this is raised high enough off that the power supply has plenty of airflow down there that it can actually breathe in some cool air or any other air, so that it's not going to be like suffocating. And it keeps the controller, actually has a lot of airflow as well, because I put that 40mm fan. It blows nice cool air right across it. So all that works out really well. And it has been running super well for the past year. I will say that. I am very, very happy with this build, except for one thing. I think that goes over all of the parts. Well, so I'm using a touchscreen on this. It's not the best thing ever. I wanted something a little different. It works. I did print a mount for a standard 2004 screen, but I ended up stealing this for my TiVo Tarantula Pro, because that review unit came with a busted LCD, and for me even to use the printer I need to put an LCD on it, so I stole this one. And I kind of decided, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the touchscreen on this. It works out fine. It does everything pretty much that this one will do, especially in this type of configuration. So for me, it works out just fine. So on to the thing that I really don't like. Is a huge mistake that I made. Now, when you look at this printer, I'm going to raise this up, but I'll give you guys a close-up here in a second. So when I pick up my Z and I pull my hot end over, take a look at it, and you can see that my head is already on, even in the home position, it's already on the heated bed. And now I can reach the full far side of it, but on this side I am losing almost 20mm on one side. So I'm only getting 180 and not the full 200. That is kind of a pain to me, and it can reach just shy of the back, probably about 10mm from the very back of the bed. So I'm only doing 190 on that one. So because of how I cut my extrusion, I shortchanged myself, and I cannot reach the full size of the print bed. In order to fix that, I would literally have to recut all except for the 4 uprights of this extrusion. And even though aluminum extrusion is cheap, you can get it in like a meter for 2020, you can get a meter for, oh, let's just say it's usually around $10 to $15 per meter, a meter and a half. Somewhere around there, depending on the country you're at. I can get it from Fugatech, I think, for $8 when he has it in stock. But he's been cranking out printers so much that he hasn't had any left over to sell. So I would have to recut all of that. I would then have to recut my carbon fiber tubing, which I do have spare. I have leftover. I bought a bunch for, I don't know why, but I bought a bunch. And I would also have to cut the steel rod, the 8mm steel rod. And if I was gonna go that far to do all of that, I would go ahead and just redo the whole Z-axis and beef that up and make it bigger. So I would just do, instead of using 10 mil, I would use 12 mil on that, just to make it a little more sturdy. It is super sturdy. I'm gonna show you some prints here. I think it works out fantastic. I'm actually testing out using Prusa Slicer to get on this because I think a lot more people want to use something other than Simplify 3D. I love the program. It works out great for me. I've never once had a problem with the random issues that you hear people talk about. I personally have not. So for me, it is a absolute godsend when running 20 different printers for that. But I do want to try Prusa Slicer out because I like the results I'm getting on my G-Tech A10 using that slicer with a custom firmware. So this firmware's custom. I built this firmware myself. It's not fantastic, but it works. So someone might be able to make some changes, make it a little bit better, but I think my prints are pretty good. So speaking of prints, I'm going to show you some close-ups of a few test prints. Some prints I actually just did just to do because I needed to print on a printer and this was out with film loaded. So hey, why not use it to print with something? But I'll show you some of the prints that I've gotten off of it recently. And again, they look fantastic and they rival the quality of my Mark III, absolutely. All right, so here's my coin, and this is using some Repco PLA. And this is sliced with Simplify 3D, and I mean, it looks beautiful. I actually didn't take off any of the support yet. It peels off super easy, just like it should on pretty much any printer that has a well-tuned profile. It comes off pretty much without ease, or with ease, I guess. Without ease is wrong, but it takes it right off. Under the supports, it does an absolute fantastic job under there. Again, that Ultra Base gives it that nice shiny bottom, a little bit of texture to it as well, because that's just how it works. Very, very smooth, super consistent. It filled everything in real nice on top. Again, it's a good profile that I have for this printer. I really enjoyed it, and I thought this came out fantastic. And now here's the coin using Prusa Slicer 2.0, which again, I've not fully tuned it. I'm like the first person I think to ever use Prusa Slicer on a HyperCube, at least in the 3D printing group I am, because no one has any idea about. But this came out fantastic. Both these are pointed at 0.2mm layer height. The support did goof up here at the bottom, so the support definitely is different than what it is for the Mark III. Like that default profile for their supports, I need to kind of figure out how to get the support better on this. So that's one thing, but again, super duper smooth walls. I mean, they both came out absolutely fantastic. And again, this being the Simplify 3D and this being the Prusa Slicer. It did come in a little denser. I think this one had an extra top layer to it, but they were both with 2 perimeters. You know, it kind of rivals the Simplify 3D. It really does. Like, this looks really, really nice, I think. I just need to figure out the support for that. This print doesn't really show a whole lot, but this is the poly panel, the Play poly panel from Make Anything. I'm making a bunch of these. I just wanted to try a 100% size. This is, I'm printing some bigger ones on other printers, but this, I mean, it just came out great. It's stuck. There's no brim or anything needed, no glue stick needed on this plate, unless you're printing flexible. And I also use that same purple filament with Prusa Slicer to go ahead and make a coin out of a different colored filament. So this is using the Rhino Reel purple. I still have a little bit of this left, and again, it came out great. The support again here at the bottom did kind of goof up, so I'm not 100% sure again what's going on there, but something with the support setting is messing that up. And this one peeled up less. I think it has to do a problem with the way the cooling fan is set up in the stock of Prusa Slicer, but there's definitely some cooling and support issues that I need to figure out. But overall, and from the top, it looks like a great print. These are just some functional prints for my AlphaWise U30 that I'm working on the review for that. And this was using Simplify 3 just because I knew that was going to work out well for me. And these came out absolutely perfect. So you can see that shiny bottom there. This is an SD card reader for that. This is a build plate support for the wires that go for the heated bed. So this actually clamps underneath there and zip tie the cabling to there. And then just a couple clips for the ribbon cable on that, just to kind of clip it to the 2020 and keep it out of the way. So these are a couple extra parts for that. Overall, this is a super fun build. I'm so glad that I was able to do kind of like this more scratch build type of printer and just do everything. It does require quite a bit of time to scratch build a machine. I sourced everything myself. I printed everything myself. I cut all the profile myself. All of that was just fun, and I have the tools to be able to do that. Not in the best way, at least not in this house, but I have the tools to at least get it done, and it did come out just, I mean, great. It was so much fun to build this. I would love to build another one, maybe with a different type, maybe do an H-bot or do a Volron or a Railcore. Any one of those I think also would be fun to do. But this one I learned a ton about building a 3D printer and how much tolerances really matter and make sure everything's aligned. There's so much you can learn from building a printer like this. So I highly recommend it to everyone to go out, do a printer like this. Again, it doesn't have to be this, it can be any of the other 50 different variants that you can print of a 3D printer or create, and just have fun with it and learn from your mistakes, learn from the process, what other people did, check out the remixes, because whatever someone designed the first time is usually not perfect. There's always some way it can be changed a little bit, and you might even be the one to be able to change files even for this. So if you guys do want to print this, I'll put the link for the actual project and the videos down in the video description. Check out the remixes again, same as I did. There might be some parts in there that you like better than what he used. You might use a different extruder, there's different carriage. I might actually switch this over to an MK3 style hot end carriage. I really like the Mark III, so I might do that and end up getting better cooling just because it reroutes, instead of the fan blowing down, add it this way, it puts it in the front. Again, so many different things that you can do with this. It's an open box. Like, this is the most customizable printer you will ever own. I will guarantee that, because you can literally do anything you want to it, and that makes it so much fun. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I am so sorry it took me over a year to produce this last final video. It has just been, there are so many other projects I've been working on lately, and this kind of just fell behind because it was working, and I didn't want to rip it all apart and redo all the wiring, and all of that was just so much work, and I just didn't see any use to it. But lately, these HyperCube videos have been on fire, and lately I have just gotten so many views, tens of thousands of views on these videos for the HyperCube. So I figured, I owe it to basically all of you that want to see this kind of content. I needed to create this video. I needed to work on the cabling, put the time into it. It took me 2 days to get this in its final form, and I'm happy I did it. It looks fantastic. It's going to right back on my shelf, and it's going to be a workhorse of the channel for quite a long time, I think. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to check out my build series, all this, I'll put links down below. Check out parts 1 through 5, I think what they are. I think this is part 6. I don't really know anymore, but if you made this far in a video, you're awesome. If you guys want to stay tuned what's going on and keep an eye out when I put out awesome new projects, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon. That way you get notification when I upload new content or do a live stream. If you want to support me and help me build something like this is 100% out of pocket, but you guys can help. You can become a patron. It only takes $1. Get access to my Patreon feed and the after show. Otherwise, you can help out as a one-time donation or use the affiliate links for any of the things that I use to build with. And there's some coupon codes down below for filament and other things and other vendors. Make sure you check all that out. I greatly appreciate you guys watching. I really hope you enjoy this series. So until next time, happy printing.